Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. First we're going to talk about the southern part of Ukraine from about Odessa and Crimea. Let's talk about Odessa. According to information we have, the Russians conducted another Iskander strike in the town, and as a result of strike there was very heavy explosions, lots of casualties among most likely Ukrainian soldiers, and we have a video of a fire also along the shore of the Black Sea. Currently we can't tell for sure whether this is the result of Iskander strike, but most likely due to the damage that wasn't Iskander strike. Anyway, the Russians continue, let's say, hunting the Ukrainian positions, and the most important, the FPV drone positions and just the Navy drone positions. Also, the sources reported that during the previous night the Ukrainians from their side conducted massive missile strike all over the entire Crimea. The sources reported that there were around 10 explosions. Currently we don't know for sure how exactly and how exactly that strike finished, and whether the Ukrainians managed to get some buildings, military ammo depots or something like this. Most likely during the day we're going to receive additional updates about that strike. Now we are moving to Zaporizhzhia direction, and we got very interesting and the most important updates during the previous night. The Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to establish almost complete control over the village by the name of Robotyne. The Russian sources published the video of very heavy clashes on the direction inside of the village between Ukrainian and Russian soldiers, and as a result of pressure the Ukrainians were forced to fall back. At some point of the video we start receiving the, let's say, the scenes of how the Ukrainians decided to fall back under the Russian pressure. For example, on this part, we can see the Ukrainians who start abandoning their positions. Furthermore, during the night, most of the mappers have already updated their maps, showing additional Russian progress, and according to, let's say, most of the mappers, the Russians currently control around 70-80% of Robotyne. So there are still, it's like, as you can see, we have adjusted the map as well, but we show the, let's say, the western and the southwestern part of Robotyne as the area under Russian control, and the eastern and the northeastern part of Robotyne as a gray zone, because currently we can't tell for sure whether the Ukrainians still save their presence along the Apatova Street or along Schidna Street. But the Ukrainian sources, somewhere at 1 a.m. of the local time, published a report that they about that video with the Russian flag. So once again, let's return back to the video. On the final scenes of the video we can see the Russian flag, and the flag was geolocated in this along this building. And the Ukrainians at 1 a.m. of the local time stated that later during the night the Ukrainians managed to counterattack the Russians, and as a result of counterattack they managed to force the Russians to fall back. Currently we can't tell for sure whether the Ukrainian information is correct or not. We don't have geolocations or videos confirming this, so for now we are going to keep the map as is. And even if the Ukrainians managed to, let's say, counterattack the Russians successfully, anyway we understand that the battle for Robotyne is about to be finished and the days of the village are numbered, because maybe they managed to counterattack, but the question is whether they managed to dig in deeper once again and to return control under the territory once again. And we have some doubts about the possible Ukrainian, let's say, progress, let's say back progress. Now we're moving back to South Donetsk direction. We continue receiving additional updates from the vicinity of Klishchiivka, of how the Russians continue clearing the area with FPV drones, significant number of strikes, artillery strikes, and the most important, that the Russians intensifying their activity in the vicinity of the village by the name of Klishchiivka, we see, and both on the based on these, let's say, geolocations and videos, we see two areas of Russian focus. The first one goes to the southwest of Klishchiivka, and the second focus lays on the southeastern part of Klishchiivka. So most likely the Russians maybe do have some plans to start offensive in direction of the village from two directions, let's say from the west and from the south, and these geolocations confirm these things. So we'll see what is going to be next, but most likely something interesting is going to happen on this direction as well during the next few days or even weeks. Ugledar nothing during the previous night, as well as Novokalynove, but the sources reported that the Russians continue moving further to the west, just with the purpose to maintain the gray zone and to capture the territories that were abandoned by the Ukrainians. Krasnohorivka, we continue receiving updates. The Ukrainians managed to redeploy a significant number of forces in the stronghold. Currently, there are very heavy clashes in the industrial zone. The report we received from this 46th Air Mobile Brigade. This is the 46th Air Mobile Brigade, which is responsible for protection and defense of Krasnohorivka. They're claiming that the situation is very difficult. They're saying that they see the Russian maneuvers, and the most dangerous maneuver is that the Russians currently are moving on the north eastern part of the village, trying to get Kobzara Street. The Ukrainians see this. Currently, the Ukrainians, more precisely, the forces of 46th Brigade reported that they can't, let's say, slow down the Russians. They're not saying that they managed to repel attacks on the northeastern to force the Russians to fall back. So we see that slowly, step by step, but situation is getting worse and worse. Now we're moving to Cheretsina direction. As you can see, during just one night we got a lot of updates, and the most important update is that the Russians published, we discussed a lot the area, that there are two different area of controls: the territory that Russian captured and was confirmed by the video and geolocations, and the territories that were captured just by the Telegram and Twitter messages without any proofs. Today we got additional proof of Russian control over the industrial zone on the western part of Cheretsina. This video shows us the clashes inside of this part. We see the storm operations, the Russians entering the industrial zone, and in the final part of the video we also can see the raised flag above the industrial zone. So the video confirms also that the Russians captured completely the western part, including the residential area. This is the Russian flag of some Russian squad. So we have adjusted the map, or the color of the map, in the vicinity, in industrial zone and around it. For now, we still haven't received any updates about a few regions, the residential area on the northern part of Cheretsina. Also, we still haven't received any geolocations confirming the Russian control over school and the, let's say, garage areas. This is it. And of course, we still haven't received any geolocations confirming the Russian control over the gardens. So three areas that, according to most of the mappers, were captured by the Russians, still without any geolocations. And we will, of course, wait for them. And if the Russians control these three territories, obviously sooner or later we're going to receive first updates. Very interesting details we continue receiving from Novokalynove. The pro-Ukrainian mappers Deep State continue updating their maps, showing us the additional Russian progress and development of the Russian foothold between the villages of Novokalynove, Gostre, and Sokol and Cheretsina. So additional control by the Russian forces, and the most important, that there is a hill 245 meters hill. This is the hill, and the hill is already under Russian control. So this is the highest point on the surface, on this area, the highest. Cheretsina is very high, but this is the highest one. And if the Russians establish control over this territory, now the Russians, the most important, can see and control the movements of armed forces of Ukraine along the main supply road N32 between the town by the name of Pokrovsk and Konstantinovka itself. And currently the distance from the hill to this area is around 11 kilometers. So once again, if the Russians are able to improve their positions around this hill, so for these purposes the Russians need first of all to establish control over the stronghold in the vicinity of Sokol, and the Russians need to enter Novokalynove, and let's say the Russians need to improve their positions as close as possible to the town by the name of Arkhangelska. After these improvements, the Russians will be able to establish fire control, not the complete control, but at least more or less reliable, more or less powerful fire control over the main supply road N32 between Первомай, Pokrovsk, Mirnograd and Konstantinovka. This will also lead to additional losses from the Ukrainian side. Now we're moving to Novokalynove, yet we haven't received even a single geolocated confirmation of Russian control over the last 50% of the village. According to geolocations, we received just 20-30% under control, but as you can see, reliable mappers continue updating their maps, showing this territory under complete Russian control. So let's wait for geolocations. Of course, we're keeping this information in our minds, trying to understand what is going to may happen right now, but for now we are waiting for geolocations. The Ukrainian sources continue reporting about the beginning of Russian offensive operation on the line Solovyovo-Sokol. As you can see, there is a very powerful stronghold between the villages. Currently, the Russians are storming this area, and the sources reported about additional Russian attacks in direction from Solovyovo in direction of Novopokrovsk. So this is third or fourth update in a row saying us that the clashes in this direction is taking place. Furthermore, the Russians continue clearing operation and FPV drone hunting on Ukrainian positions between Orlovka and Umansk. The Russians published significant number of geolocations of FPV drones against on Ukrainian positions, Ukrainian forces in the area, which confirms that the Russians are clearing this territory and most likely are about to finish this. And as soon as they do this, they will enter the trenches and will get as close as possible to Umansk itself. So the clashes on this area also are ongoing. Now we're moving to Chasiv Yar. We have additional updates from the territory. Most of the mappers also confirmed our yesterday statement that the Ukrainians restored complete control over the eastern part of Chasiv Yar. From the other side, the Russians continue clearing operation with FPV drones, trying to hunt Ukrainian soldiers inside of the stronghold. There are a lot of Ukrainian forces. There are still a lot of job to do, and currently we can't tell for sure whether the Russians are able to start offensive on this direction tomorrow or in a week or even in the months. There are still too many Ukrainian soldiers. Also the Russians published the video of a drone flying above the village by the name of Bogdanovka. On these scenes we can see the village that was completely reduced to ruins. I'll remind you that it took around 3 months for the Russians and Ukrainians to reduce the let's say village to ruins, and only after that the Russians had possibilities to start an offensive, so which confirms that there are still a lot of job to do in the eastern part of Chasiv Yar due to the presence of high-rise building area. We haven't received anything from Klishchiivka direction. Siversk area, after a short operational pause, the Russians renewed their offensive, renewed their, let's say, artillery strikes on Ukrainian positions in the vicinity of the landfill. So most likely, during the next few days, the Russians will conduct another attempt to attack the Bilogorovka itself, and with the purpose to establish complete control or at least to break through the defense belt. Furthermore, the Ukrainian sources published the video with a significant number of destroyed armored vehicles and light vehicles and cars and trucks that lays along the main supply road that goes from Grigorovka Serebyanka. As you can see, significant number of destroyed vehicles, significant number of casualties among the personnel that took place during the battle for the village, during the artillery strikes during the previous phases of the special military operation. Southern Kupiansk, no updates. Northern Kupiansk, just another report from the pro-Ukrainian mappers Deep State about additional progress of the Russian forces inside of the village by the name of Kislovka. So currently we still haven't received updates confirming additional progress, but we have reports with the flag. Remember the video that was published a few days ago. Borderlands, the Russians continue pummeling the area with artillery, with I'd say aviation. The Russians continue searching and hunting the Ukrainian soldiers in this area. So more and more sources reported that the Russians are about to start the, let's say, final phase or the beginning of the sanitary buffer zone creation. On this video, for example, we can see the newly created fortifications by the Ukrainians that were built just a day ago or were in the process of construction. The Russians discovered this area and started bombing this territory significantly. After that, the Ukrainians abandoned their engineering equipment and so on. Kharkiv is completely blackout, no electricity for more than 200,000 people in the area, and the two officers reported to the Financial Times that the recent strikes of Russian forces confirms that sooner or later the Russians will start an offensive operation in this direction as well. When talking about Kiev, we have reports about additional military aid to Ukraine. Canada is going to send additional personnel, armored carriers to Ukraine. Germany also announced about additional military package. They're going to be murders. let's say armored vehicles. There are going to be, let's say, different types of different weapon, artillery rounds, let's say equipment, and so on. So it's a very big military aid package. And the United States of America, NATO countries reported that they have big problems with electronic warfare equipment of Russian Federation. During the special military operation, the Western countries created a special, let's say, artillery strike Excalibur for the Ukrainians, but the effectiveness of this type of weapon was reduced from 70 till 6% due to the presence of Russian electronic warfare equipment. So this is the situation. Most likely the 30th of April is going to be very interesting due to the progress of the Russian forces in the vicinity of Robotyne and the Cheretina. So let's see what is going to be next. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds you we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.